Gen Z men are flooding back into churches. That's what the data is saying. But it's not because they found religion. It's because they found something the world stopped giving them. So a very interesting stat is that 43% of men now attend church weekly. And the reason why? Well, nobody's talking about this. I'm Jason Nova. I'm an entrepreneur, comic creator, martial artist father, and yeah, I'm a God chaser and truth chaser, but I'm not here to preach at you today. I'm here to explain something that's confusing the hell out of both secular and religious people. Young men are suddenly showing up to churches in numbers we haven't seen in decades. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things. The 3 things men found that culture stripped away, essentially. Barna Group just dropped data that shows 43% of men now attend church weekly compared to only 36% of women, the largest gender gap they've recorded in 25 years. Gen Z and Millennial men, 46% and 55% attendance rate respectively. So after a decade of being told that masculinity is toxic, church is backward, tradition is oppressive, men are suddenly filling pews again, which is interesting, right? So what changed? Here's what the think pieces won't tell you. I'm a man, and what I do know is that modern culture gave men 3 options. And those options were apologize for being a man, 2, perform masculinity on social media for likes, and 3, disappear into video games and pornography. And a lot of young men looked at those options and said, yeah, nah, no thanks. In the UK, church attendance among 18 to 24-year-old men jumped from 4% in 2018 to 21% in 2024. That's not a trend, that's a movement. And here's why this terrifies both the left and traditional churches. But before I go on, I'm going to just outline some additional stats. So Charisma magazine reports that young men aren't just attending, they are volunteering, they're leading small groups, they're reshaping church governance. They came to build something, not just sit and be preached at, which is unusual. So a good way to think about it is that guys aren't just running to Jesus. They're running from a culture that told them that their natural masculine drive for purpose, for challenge, for risk, for brotherhood was a disease that needed to be cured. And so what started to happen first was you started to see some other interesting men show that this was wrong. Like Andrew Tate, who, says a lot of interesting things, but I'm not advocating for. This is making everyone really uncomfortable because a man is a man is a man and it's built a certain way. The secular left is panicking because men choosing church completely destroys the narrative that young people are evolving beyond religion and people are leaving church and finding it, irrelevant. The traditional church as well is confused because these guys aren't showing up for the altar call, right? They're going beyond that to something deeper. They want a bit more. And here's the part that pisses off both camps, right? These men coming through are treating church like what it was supposed to be, what it was always meant to be, like a brotherhood of men on a mission, not a social club, not a therapy session to make you feel good. So here's what young men are actually finding in church that modern culture stripped away. The first thing is purpose beyond consumption. Modern culture told men, your purpose is to make money, is to buy stuff, is to have bling and die. Maybe post some inspirational quotes on LinkedIn in between. But church says you were made to build something that outlasts you. Family, legacy, kingdom impact for a higher purpose. A pastor in Texas actually asked his congregation of young men, what's the Lord doing? Why is he sending us all these young men? Because some people are actually stumped about what to do with this trend. And what's the answer? The truth is, young men are tired of living for a dopamine hit. They really want to build something. A stat is actually showing that a lot more people are moving away from actual smartphones to dumb phones because they want to be able to focus better. I think that's really interesting. The second thing that young men are looking for is brotherhood without competition. When you think about the workplace, it's competition. If you think about social media, it's about performance. If you think about the gym, it's the same thing, it's status games. On the flip side, in church small groups, what do you find? Other guys wrestling with the same questions about purpose, the questions about character, and how to be a man without apologizing for it. Charisma magazine found that these men aren't looking for mentors to just tell them what to do so that they can be passive and docile. They're looking for peers to figure it out with. They're looking for brothers to fight the challenges with. In brotherhood, not in networking. And the third thing really driving men is moral clarity in really confusing times. We live in crazy times. Culture says truth is subjective, there's no black and white. Culture says masculinity is toxic. Culture says define your own reality. And young men looked around at the mental health crisis, the madness, the loneliness epidemic, the complete lack of direction, and said, this isn't working. Church offers what they desperately need: clear answers. They want a clear moral framework. They want something to anchor to when everything else is shifting sand. And like him or hate him, this is something that Charlie Kirk really stood for and is an icon for. Because when you think about what young men are looking for, this isn't just about getting saved. It's about finding what you were made for. What is my purpose? Again, here's what nobody wants to admit. Young men aren't returning to church because they want more religion or because they got more religious. They're returning because church offers what culture can't or won't give them anymore. Like I said, it's purpose, it's brotherhood, it's moral clarity. So if you're a young man feeling lost, I'm going to give you some actionable steps. I'm not trying to tell you exactly what to do, but give you a framework. Find a group of young men that actually building something and not just consuming religious content. Look for volunteer opportunities, not just services to attend. The other thing is you can join a Christian men's small group. I'm not talking of a Bible study where somebody just lectures and everybody just, nods their head in acceptance. I'm talking about a brotherhood where you actually wrestle with real questions about life, about purpose, and about character. The third thing is I want you to ask yourself, what am I building that will outlast me? If the answer is nothing, then you've likely found your problem. Church gives you a framework to build legacy for a bigger purpose, a kingdom, a God, not just to accumulate stuff. Look, the world told you that seeking purpose, that seeking brotherhood, that seeking moral clarity was weakness. But church is saying that's exactly what makes you strong. That's what actually makes you dangerous. So if you're listening to this as a young man or someone who can just relate, I'd like you to drop a comment. Are you one of these guys? What brought you back or what's keeping you away? Let's talk about this. I'm just going to end on this note. Stop apologizing for wanting purpose as a young man and start building something that matters. Go out there, be strong, be dangerous. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.